ASEAN Breakfast Call. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Morning!
Good morning, everybody. It's a Friday.
Oh my god! I'm so excited.
It happened so fast. Maybe because we had a public holiday yesterday.
Oh, just to give a mention, someone's birthday yesterday. She's the Sultan of Selangor. And thanks to him, we actually had a state holiday for Selangorians.
And I got to sleep in, so that's good. And later we are going to have very interesting discussions for our Blast from the Grassroots and ABC Dialogue. We have two very different musicians. One who is doing some electronic, indie, experimental thing, and another band who are quite established already. So we'll have one at 8:30 and one at 9:15.
And both of them are going to be all stripped off.
Under an ASEAN, yes.
Well, let's go to the news outside of Southeast Asia. News that are really something that we want to talk more about, which is the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes, and a very young person received the Nobel Peace Prize. It's not me, unfortunately. It's actually Malala Yousafzai.
I thought we already reported it. Last time
it was that she was going to receive it, but now she actually received it.
Okay, that's a long time for the award to be given to her.
True, and what's also interesting about this news is she, after receiving the award, she said that one day I am actually going to be the Prime Minister and make the necessary changes for the country.
Well, we all know what happened to Benazir Bhutto when she was the Prime Minister of Pakistan a couple of years back, and she did quite well, but she also got a lot of haters, and she died a horrible death by being shot by the unidentified gunman.
So you're trying to scare Malala here?
No, I'm just saying that politics in Pakistan is not an easy water to meddle with. There's a lot of factions, and people just simply kill each other if they feel that they don't support you as the Prime Minister.
And on that note, that reminds me, she was actually shot before, and she kind of came back from that.
Makes her stronger, right?
Yeah, which
that
is probably why she's not scared about what happened.
Like that song by Kelly Clarkson.
What doesn't kill you make you stronger.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
I mean, we are actually proud of her for even receiving the Nobel Peace Prize and be able to spread, message of peace and trying to influence people about what the reality in Pakistan, especially in her village, where she's trying to encourage girls to get an education, to go to school, to equip themselves with the knowledge, and hopefully to be able to grow up and do the same thing for their own daughters as well.
And that seems to be like the trend these days, when the government is not really responding. People tend to just step up and take the matters into their own hands. And that doesn't always end up well, but it's definitely a good move from the way I see it, because if we keep waiting for the government all the time to come up with something, come up with some move, some new system, some new policy, it takes a very long time. So for the people to actually come together and step up and say, you know what, we've had enough of this, no more tolerating this thing.
But it's also a catch-22 thing, right? It's either you're waiting for the government, but if the government doesn't even aware of the situation down there, it's like you're waiting for the egg to turn into chicken whether there is an egg or not. Well, it's another question.
I think usually they are aware of it, but for them to actually come up with a solution, for some reason it takes a very long time, and there's a lot of complicated steps that are involved.
So in a way that government is a very important element within a nation state or within a society, but relying solely on government to make changes is definitely something that shouldn't be the case, because for the government to be reactive, even so, it needs the people to voice out their concern, to rally on it. So yeah.
Exactly, and we should never let the government be complacent and be comfortable where they are. We need to constantly be pushing them and pressuring them and tell them that okay, this is how we want things to be done.
And guess who did that?
Yes, we have a group of people who are doing it on our very own soil.
And and in a university nearby, University Malaya. So yesterday, unfortunately, when the UM student did a protest near the compound or inside the compound of University Malaya, they were actually they actually got their camps ruined. Number one, and number two is they are actually suspended and being fined.
And this was, of course, in line of the Anwar event that took place a couple of months ago. And 8 students were actually charged for organizing this event or even being spearheading this whole thing. And of course, they were not happy about the students being charged because they don't think that they did anything wrong by just inviting a politician to come over and talk in the university. And which is why they started the Occupy UM, which you were mentioning earlier. And yeah, I actually saw the video of the camps being torn down by the authorities, and it was a very scary thing for me to watch. I'm kind of...
By a bunch of police even.
Yes.
It is scary because these are just students, and this is a university compound, mind you. It's not like some area in KL. So you would assume that university would be the safest place for students to voice out their concern, but it seems like that's not the case. And what it seems like, for example, President Fahmi Zainal has been found guilty of 4 charges and fined 150 for each charge, and he has been suspended for 2 semesters. The same with his other colleagues for the UM8. All of them were charged with 150 ringgit fines and were being suspended for 2 semesters. But what make it even sadder is the fact that the voices of the students are always being suppressed by university, even though the funny thing is, or the irony thing is, authorities or people always say that our students need to voice out more. Our students are too meek, they are not critical enough in their views. But when they are critical, they are straight away being suppressed.
And that's the thing. For one thing, they feel like students should always, they're still kids and they should still listen to the authorities, that the authorities have a very deep impact or control over the students. But another thing is most of these students who were involved were actually law students, so they actually know the law really well. They know what law they're breaking, they know what law they're not breaking, they know their rights. So it's really hard when somebody just step in and say, hey, you can't do this. And of course they're going to question because they know the law by heart, and they're like, why is this wrong? You know, tell me, did this law in this place says that I can do this, I can actually invite people over, I can actually set up a tent in the universities, doesn't break the law. So like you said, when students actually become bold and they know who they are and they know the law, they can think for themselves, and then that also doesn't reflect well on them.
Yeah, it doesn't really reflect them well on them. It partly because, I mean, to send a strong message against a student who do something different, like inviting Anwar. I mean, you don't necessarily have to agree with Anwar, but the fact that they don't even have the freedom to invite anyone that they want for a talk, it shows that the authority is in fear, which is something that is really sad.
And well, like you mentioned, they can invite a person to the university to just give a talk, and just because, like, for example, if I attend, that doesn't necessarily mean that I am in support of Anwar or I agree with what he say. Maybe I just want to hear what he has to say to all the students.
And mind you, Anwar was once a student leader as well, and he did a few protests back in his heydays, especially on the Baling issue. But you know, to me, the fact that you don't have the freedom to even invite people with different points of view to share their views is is wrong in a way. You don't have to agree with any of the speakers, or you don't even have to agree with the stance of UM8, the student leaders themselves. But you cannot just simply shut them up and then just suspend them.
And that is why they're having the Occupy movement right now, and hopefully nothing bad happens, nothing that threatens their safety, and see how that turns out for them.
Don't worry, this is a Human Rights Day or month.
Yes, it is.
So the whole month of this month is a human rights. It's a celebration of Human Rights Day. And what's interesting is people are not really aware of it, which is fine because it's Christmas and holiday. Who cares about Human Rights Day? But it does mean a lot for people who have very little to support for themselves when it comes to human rights issue. And I'm talking about what is happening in Cambodia. So apparently monks and government workers are leading a Cambodian rally on Human Rights Day. This is something amazing.
It is, and it shows that their level of awareness is probably a lot higher than it is in most other countries.
Are you saying Malaysia is part of it?
Yeah, like you just said, that most people are not aware, and of course it's because it's December, it's a Christmas month, everyone's going on holidays. But it also depends on who it really affects the Human Rights Day, and it's usually targeted at all these mostly migrant workers, especially, who are not given their basic rights. They're not earning the minimum wage that they're supposed to, and people who are probably oppressed by their employers. And all these people, it's time for them to actually come together. And
when Malaysia is going to have that?
When are we gonna have monks and garment workers walking around?
or Christian leaders and Muslim leaders walking around together with people who are off the bottom of the social economic pie. I mean, for months and months, when we report about monks, we always report it in a negative way, especially when it concerns with the Rohingya issue. And people usually will ask me, like, how can monks be evil? I mean, Buddhism is all about peace, right? I mean, how can they preach about hatred towards Muslim? But perhaps it's in the case of Myanmar, it could be part of the state ideology, or it could be, when you feel so threatened by a community that you use religion to spread hatred. But I'm proud of the monks in Cambodia. They seem to be following the path of Latin America, where Christian leaders actually were more concerned about socio-economic condition of society, and they actually were doing this. They call themselves as they call the movement as Christian liberation, meaning that they join forces with ordinary citizens to fight against dictatorial government and all that. And with this, with the case of Cambodia, having Buddhist monk and government workers to rally in the capital calling for respect for human rights, and release of a group of jailed land activists, which reported a couple of weeks earlier, is something that I wish could happen more and more in Southeast Asia.
And they also submitted a petition to the government to call for the use of force and violence against people, rights defenders, and to stop forced evictions, because these are also a problem in Cambodia, like land grabbing, which we talked about a lot of times. It's a very serious problem in Cambodia.
And in a lot of Southeast Asian countries.
Yes, because of the weak laws that's being practiced in the country, and
yeah,
and also the property claims that's been distorted over the years, and there's no proper structure, no proper system to handle this issue. And all over Southeast Asia, like you said, we have a lot of human rights issues going on, and like we were talking about the first news earlier, it doesn't always have to start with the government. It can start with us.
It has to always start with us.
It has to always start with us, and for people to actually come together and tell the government, like, okay, we don't want these people to be treated like this anymore. Like, let's end this thing because we are all humans and we're all here and we should all respect one another and be given our basic rights. So what Cambodia is doing in this sense is very impressive.
It's very impressive. I give example. A Cambodian court last month jailed 10 female land rights activists, which we reported a few weeks ago, and a 75-year-old woman, and a monk for a year each for blocking traffic during a protest. And last month also, Cambodia raised the minimum monthly wage for 2015 for some 650,000 garment workers for $128 only after a series of strikes and protests over pay and conditions. But the hike fell short of union demands of 140. US dollar 140, how much would it be in ringgit? Probably 400 ringgit, would that be?
Maybe, yeah.
4 to 500
About
ringgit.
500.
But it's still very low, right?
It is very low.
It's very, very low.
But then again, if you look at Malaysia, it's probably about the same. When the migrant workers come here, they probably earn less than 500 ringgit as well. As much as we hate to admit that, they are not being treated well in this country, although we are well known for our hospitality and for our friendliness.
Depends on which class you're from. If you're from the upper class, everything is good for you. I mean, let's not talk about class. Let's talk about something that governments are really changing mindset or trying to be more innovative when it comes to approach on foreign policy. Of course, socio-economic conditions are important, and because it is so important that Joko Widodo has made it a thing that Indonesia foreign policy should put priority on domestic needs first before before turning to the global community and just be friends with whoever that they think that they want to be friends. Because in the past, during SBY's reign, he just want to be friends with everyone. That's it. He doesn't really have a clear-cut foreign policy where we only be friends with you if you benefit our society or our community.
And what's interesting about this is there are two very clear reactions to what Jokowi is doing. And one group is, of course, saying that yes, it's a good thing. He's focusing on his people. And another thing is saying that he's becoming too pro people in terms of his approach and his policies.
Why are you laughing, Gowri?
Because you are laughing, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how can a pro-people diplomacy be a bad thing?
Yeah, how can it be a bad thing, right?
I read your mind. And yeah, that's the thing. The way we look at it, it's great that Jokowi is focusing on his people, because we were just talking about migrant workers earlier, and most of them are actually Indonesians who come over to be housemaids, to work in the construction sites, and there are a lot of scandals happening in that sense as well, and that has been affecting our relationship with Indonesia. So for Jokowi to actually focus on that is actually a very good move, because he wants to protect his people.
So there's nothing wrong with being pro people, isn't it? Especially majority of your workforce, when you export you export people to work in other countries, are actually, I mean, they are migrant workers. They are probably the bottom of any human chain, human food chain in other countries. So definitely you should put priority in how your people are being treated overseas.
And I guess the biggest concern here is that Indonesia is sort of abandoning other aspects of its foreign policy, and he's not really focused on building relationships with other countries, which is probably equally important, because you want to get investors to come in. You want people to have a certain perception about Indonesia. But then again, like we said earlier, it's more important for him to take care of his people first and then try to develop good relations with other countries, because it's kind of a reciprocating effect as well.
In fact, what Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi herself has done is to sign an agreement together with Communication Minister with 4 cellular operators in the country to allow Indonesians going overseas to receive a text message upon their arrival with the address and contact numbers of Indonesian's representative office in the country they are in. I think it's a great thing. Personally, I think they are really starting to think more innovatively and you just push the boundaries. Like just because we want to have economic development, we want to expand better, doesn't mean we are putting human rights at the back seat. We are still like wanting it to be as one of the priority, you know.
And it's all about the actions now. It's not just saying that we are planning to do this or we are planning to do that. And they've already also started evacuation of the Indonesian crew members who are stuck in South Korea. And they also
Is Grace listening?
I'm sure she's listening. And also trying to bring back people who are being oppressed in Malaysia or other countries around the region. And this will definitely turn out safer, and the citizens will be better protected.
In fact, he said that good foreign policy exercises transparent, accountable measures with no surprises in action. So they are definitely moving towards forming good foreign policy. And in fact, what is important right now that Indonesia is want to pay more attention when it comes to their foreign policy is to actually develop a code of conduct for the South China Sea, which has been long overdue and has been going on and on without any ending, and preparation for the ASEAN economic community. So what is Malaysia doing? We are also doing the same thing, but whether we are as rigorously paying full attention on the ASEAN economic community or not is left to be said.
Yes, we are. Of course, it's scary because we are so close to January where things are gonna kick off, and we are the chair of the ASEAN 2015, and hopefully there's been a lot of planning going on. So hopefully we manage to put all that into action and drive the country.
Before we end the news commentary for today, even though Jokowi score points on his foreign policy direction, but he didn't really score points when it comes to death row traffickers. So apparently Indonesia's Joko Widodo vows no pardon for death row traffickers.
You know who won't be happy about this? Mr. Toshi. Who was here just about a couple of months ago.
Yeah. Mr. Toshi is a US-based photographer that specializes in photographing death row inmates.
And he was, of course, very much against the death penalty, and he doesn't think that it should be granted to anybody, no matter what they did. But President Jokowi here begs to differ, and he's saying that if you smuggle drugs into our country, you are going to get the death penalty and no questions asked.
I'm not asking any questions. But yeah, it's definitely not going to be a popular policy for Jokowi to actually say those kind of stuff. Maybe he's still stuck in an era where, you know, everything is solved with an eye for an eye. Who knows?
And of course, this also came in line with the statistics that 50 young Indonesians die every day from drug use, and there are about 4.5 million drug users in the country. And this is a pretty harsh move for Joko Widodo to actually say that, but we'll have to see how.
I think the best move forward is for policy advisors or whoever that is close to Jokowi to actually plan a trip for him to countries like Amsterdam and like Holland or Portugal and all that, to actually show them there's an alternative way to solve the problem of drugs, not necessarily through death penalty.
And that's all. that's all today.
Isn't it a good advice, by the way?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh my
you're
God.
waiting for my approval.
Oh yeah, I was waiting for your approval.
That is a very good way. Well, there are a lot of countries in Europe who are not practicing the death penalty, and of course there are always alternatives, and he's probably not aware of those.
Could be. So if you want to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, just feel free to do so. We post daily news there and interesting stuff also we would share in our social media sites. And of course, if they want to listen to us live,
they can always go to our website at durianasean.com, or they can download the TuneIn app on their smartphone, look for Durian ASEAN, and also we have our podcast later uploaded on our YouTube channel.
So stay tuned. And the next one, we will have our Blast from the Grassroots.
And we have Arif talking about his music.
You want to listen to that?